2025 has been a special year for gaming, not only because of how packed it was with pretty much an amazing game for any genre you can think of, except racing for some reason, but also because of how affordable it was to experience pretty much any great game that released this year, courtesy of Game Pass and dirt cheap indie games. Now, I know a lot of people regarding that Game Pass comment would think, haha, this bot is fine with not owning his games. And well, the thing with me is that I like to experience games that I'm excited for day one of their release, not only to avoid spoilers, but also to avoid the general consensus surrounding the game, leading me to being surprised by the unexpected quality of said games, which definitely happened this year. So just being able to do that without having to worry about the monetary deficit of a purchase is a blessing. And also, you can always just buy the games you loved later when they're on sale on Steam, so it's just a win-win situation as far as I'm concerned. And also, indie games finally coming out at the forefront and just blowing away the AAA garbage that gets churned out each year was a sight to behold, even though Ubisoft got somewhat creative with their nonsense this time. I respect the hustle, honestly. But then they hustled too far, and now I want to commit arson. Now, the title may be a bit misleading because at its core, this video is just a glorified game ranking, but I still did talk about a lot of things that I don't see discussed very often regarding the games, and some really interesting things that happened this year regarding the overall gaming community. Case in point. So in order to not make my ramblings completely incomprehensible, I decided to divide the games into different tiers. The disappointing tier because I don't think I'm smart enough or have the right certification to justify if a video game is objectively bad or not. So I'm just gonna make a disappointing tier for games that I was excited for, they just did not meet my personal expectations, and I also talked about how I personally think they could be better. The honorable mentions tier, which consists of games that very well should have been on the list, but aren't because of how stacked this year was. And the top 10, because that was what I was initially going to make a video on, but ironically enough, I have more interesting things to say about games outside of the top 10 now, so yeah. Just one last thing, I won't be including PlayStation exclusive games because I don't have a PS5, and no game that has come out this year made me change up on that, so sorry Death Stranding 2. We're not gonna meet this year. And also, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is not gonna be on the list because, well, I just did not get around to playing it this year, unfortunately. Also, spoiler alert for literally every single game I talk about. Even though I did give a spoiler warning for games in which I believe the narrative matters to a certain extent, but I'm still gonna put it here because why not? So, with that being said, let's get on with this beast of a video. Well, this will be easy. Haha, Mind's Eye. Haha, Black Ops 7. Haha, Shadow Labyrinth. Silent Hill F. Oh boy, we are starting off rough. I would like to preface this by saying I feel like a lot of criticism this game receives is just invalid and disingenuous. Like, whenever a video from this dude pops up on my feed, I know it will be a load of garbage, and of course, YouTube's do not recommend always makes a point to not work. So I'm not one of those people who likes to say, the F in Silent Hill F stands for faggot. Wait, the F in Silent Hill F stands for fraud. Because in reality, it does not matter too much if a game feels like it is a part of a pre-existing franchise or not, because no matter how faithful a game can be, the old heads will always label it as not feeling like insert pre-established franchise. What really matters though is if the game was good and scary. Unfortunately for me, it was neither. Now, I know a lot of people like to bring up media literacy, which is just one of those trending words to spout out whenever someone criticizes a literary work, which is generally considered to have actual thought being put into it, and I just find it very annoying, especially when people use that to push down any valid criticism for that. Disclaimer, side tangent here, but this is very prevalent in the Chainsaw Man movie fans, which I generally thought was a great 8.5 out of 10 movie, but it's not a flawless masterpiece or true art in this medium because it's like the most basic arc in the manga, which falls back on a lot of tropes which have been done before but better. And even though it had scenes which were genuinely incredible, it had these metaphors which were practically thrown at your face. Like, yeah, I get it, I don't need to see it 5 times in a 2-minute long scene. And the thing is, a lot of these fans actually try to add depth to the story through their own headcanons, which at best don't make sense and at worst completely go against what was originally intended. Plus, maybe a piece of media isn't as deep as you pretend when 99% of the discourse surrounding it has been glazing it. And the same thing can be said for the Silent Hill fanbase regarding this game, because beyond Silent Hill 2, the series does not actually have as much subtlety and nuance as you might think from the outside looking in. Sure, they tackle deep themes, but it's not done in such a way that it can go over your head entirely if you're not paying attention. And this applies heavily to Silent Hill F. Characters are straight up giving monologues in the middle of boss battles, and any feelings that Hinako has for some character are written directly in a journal. The story for the first playthrough of this game is as clear as they can get, especially because of the setting of the game. I knew exactly what they were going for, so much so that I was able to even pick up on the ending of the first playthrough quite easily, so it didn't actually hit me as hard. But ironically enough, that's not the whole story, because turns out the second and especially third playthrough managed to recontextualize a lot of established themes in a really unpredictable and unique way that I did not expect. For example, spoiler alert, by the third playthrough you find out that Hinako's father is not the monster that he was portrayed as, and honestly, it was a very nice way of subverting expectations because everyone knew the main themes for this game would be the misogyny faced by women in the 1960s Japan, but it actually managed to show that it wasn't that simple back then, even for the men, and that's amazing. But I never actually got to see that development through playing the game, but through a Reddit comment, because actually playing this game is the biggest form of torture imaginable. Thing is that the story for the first playthrough of the game was just not good enough for me to solely be able to warrant other playthroughs, because the actual gameplay was extremely mid, to the point of being bad. I know the developers were pissed when people compared the gameplay to Souls-likes, but that was a bloody compliment, because this game's combat is 10 times worse compared to the worst Souls-like that I have played. Now, I know a lot of my problems would be fixed by just playing on story mode, but like, there's no way in hell I'm playing a video game on story mode. Plus, hard didn't feel very difficult, just boring, and it was because of the abysmal enemy variety, and most of the enemies felt pretty generic. And some of them felt like straight rip-offs of fucking Souls games. Plus, the level design of this game is so mid. This game has more corridors than Final Fantasy XIII. And seriously, the amount of times an enemy jumped at me from my blind spot became more annoying and played out than fun. The puzzles were the only good part of the game, but they were very few far in between. Now, the idea of making players go through a game thrice is not new. Nier Automata is the most popular example of this, but it's not the best example because that goes to Armored Core 6, which, contrary to popular belief, does have a story, and it's fucking amazing. The same people who will call this game's story a timeless masterpiece are the same people who will say AC6 doesn't have one. Now, the reason why the third playthrough setting works is because replayability is the lifeblood of Armored Core games. The only reason why you would go to this game is not the story, but the replayability of trying out new builds. Overall, the reason why this will probably be the biggest part of the video is because, well, I love Silent Hill. I have played every game beyond Origins, and I am a bloody Grand Gaming Central fan, so I was expecting more, and I felt like this game fails on so many aspects for me. When I first saw the trailers, I thought the game would lean more towards this unique trypophobia aesthetic, which genuinely made my skin crawl, but they just didn't. Only around the ending of the first playthrough was this used, which just sucked. Not to be a Kojima glazer, but Silent Hills felt like the right direction for the story to go in. Interdimensional horror is very unique, and it still could have let them keep things related to Silent Hill, while also trying out new stuff. But now, they're just going to make Silent Hill games covering stories around the world, which... why even call the game Silent Hill at that point? Oh, I know! Sales! Thank you, Konami! I don't think I am as excited for the next installments for the series, and it makes me angry. It makes me so angry that I will become Le Beast! Welcome our next victim. It's ironic that the game is called The Beast, while Kyle Crane feels more like a puppy compared to fucking Hinako, which, yes, was probably my favorite part of that game. Me when I press L3 plus R3 to accept the Beast. Seriously, I didn't know where to mention this amongst the hate speech, but Hinako is so based and I actually did like her. She was the best part of that game, and seriously, why wasn't Kyle Crane more like her? I mean, honestly, when you name your game The Beast, there are certain expectations that I would come with for the tone and gameplay for this, and Dying Light Le Beast managed to not deliver on either. It does feel like a DLC for Dying Light 1, which should have come out 10 years ago because it adds absolutely nothing to the gameplay or story even. Like, you could just replay Dying Light 1's new version and have a better experience in this game and save your money, because you are playing in a world in which you are driving and running around more than you are parkouring due to most of the map not having fucking buildings. And for the combat, the most you get is the most bare bones left click simulator out there, and in order to balance that, you get enemies that are much more tanky, so the game becomes slower paced and more annoying compared to the first one. And the story, why is Kyle Crane such a bitch? Gets manipulated by two hot chicks and does nothing about it. While I wouldn't be too bothered by it, but the thing is, the title has the beast in it. I would have loved if Kyle Crane actually changed to become more cruel to suit the more dire circumstances of this game, as Le Beast actually affects his personality, because how cool would that be? I mean, don't make him kill the sheriff, but at least don't become her bitch. Honestly, the beast could affect the parkour as well, with Kyle being able to clear buildings by jumping like crazy, like this is fucking Prototype after getting his upgrades. Like, I don't know, make it different, make the beast title actually matter in terms of story and gameplay instead of doing nothing with it. This is just a very generic and outdated experience for me, especially with the awful Ubisoft-ass quest design and side content. And honestly, the only reason why this game was received so well is because it at worst is a Dying Light game, which means it's still fun to play, unlike and also Kyle Crane, which people love for some reason, so yeah. Hell is Us. This game's whole identity was that the devs bitched about Silksong and it didn't tell you what to do next. Wait a minute, isn't that just Metroid Prime? Honestly, I had originally thought of not putting any music for this part because of the whole not giving access to the music of Soul Valley if you did not buy the amiibo shtick that Nintendo did, which Nintendo fans still defend, by the way, but I really want people to listen to the Fury Green soundtrack. It is so good, and that's probably the only good thing about this game, the music. And also, Sylux, who literally just sounds like fucking Thanos when he starts crashing out at the end of the game.
Oh, I'm just getting started. Can y'all just shut the fuck up? I'm trying to end the world, and you motherfuckers keep talking about stupid shit I don't give a flying fuck about. So can you all shut your stupid little mouths before I tear my own fucking head off?
Now, I don't love Metroid Prime 1 Remastered as much as a lot of other people do. I feel like it's sadly one of those classics that aged like milk, and it was my only point of reference before playing Prime 4, so I generally thought that this whole series was just flawed, but then I wondered why though. I mean, of course, the combat is a massive problem in both games, but Metroid Prime 4 fixes that to a certain extent, so the other big problem was the excessive backtracking. But backtracking is literally the lifeblood of a Metroidvania, a genre that I love. So what's the problem? And to find that out, I decided to play Prime 2 and 3 on PC legally. Of course, because I just had a V lying around 18 years after it became abandonware. Thankfully, Prime 2 and 3 are my favorite Prime games, and it's not even close. Both of them are pretty much equally as good to me, which, while still not on the level of many Metroidvanias I have played, were at least fun and satisfying, which was definitely not the case for Prime 1. Not to dog too much on Prime 1, but people literally state every single problem they had with Prime 2, even though Prime 1 had those problems, but worse. Prime 2 is definitely the tougher game combat-wise and world design-wise due to the light and dark worlds, but it still felt less tedious due to having less backtracking and actual decent puzzle design. Prime 1 puzzles were things like, find 5 of this thing in this one area, have fun, or platforming challenges which generally almost made me quit the game, like that one Morph Ball section in Magmoor Caves with that absolutely rage-inducing soundtrack that goes ho 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 ho. I know I'm going on a side tangent right now, but holy shit, playing Prime 1 was an absolutely painful experience, and I would generally recommend playing Prime 4 over that, because holy. Anyways, playing Prime 2 and especially 3 made me realize that the main problem with these games was not backtracking, it was actually the traversal, or lack thereof in these games. Samus walks like an absolute tank, and considering how limited and slow the movement of this game is beyond very few shortcuts, going from literally one side of the map to the other side of the map for an upgrade while going through rooms where you have to fight the same shitty enemies with the same shitty combat can lead to a lot of frustration. Prime 2 fixes that by having less of that. Prime 3 fixes that by adding teleportation, which may ruin the interconnectedness of the world design, but like, it doesn't really matter because the puzzle design of Prime 3 is the best in the trilogy. Plus, the first time you go through a world, you don't have access to teleportation, so in general, it just exists to reduce tedium. So, what does Prime 4 do? Well, everything worse than Prime 3. I cannot believe the fact that this game's traversal is somehow worse than Prime 1, because at least in that game, when you are backtracking, it's still a way for you to find new items and get yourself familiar with the map, whereas in this game, it's about riding in an actual fucking wasteland to 4 completely unrelated dungeons in order to get your upgrades. I cannot stress how fucking awful that is, so I'm just gonna leave it at that. Another problem with the Prime games is the final fetch quest, which is pretty universally disliked. Even the most hardcore of Prime fans consider it unnecessary padding, and Prime 4 somehow made it even worse with the most mindless version of it, with Breaking Crystal Simulator. The gameplay that you have seen of me breaking these things accounts for only like 15% of what you need to do to progress. That is fucking crazy. When I was doing this for the first time, I had to give the hardest exam of my goddamn life the next day. And here I am, breaking crystals for 3 hours straight. This little fun fact is actually not that important. I just found it very funny and I hope I don't fail. I wish I don't fail, please. Now, Prime 3 yet again does it the best because it gives you the most of the energy cells you need through normally progressing in the game. Plus, you don't need every energy cell to unlock the finale. That is brilliant and led to it being the only Prime game where I didn't use a singular guide and had the least amount of frustration playing, along with it actually having the best story with the coolest characters who in general are better and more interesting than Prime 4's bum-ass characters. 6-7. Prime 3 might just be my favorite, wow. There is much more to talk about, but I feel like I made my point. Honestly, at this point, they should just get Mercury Stream, the people who made Dread, on the Prime series as well at this point, because they know how to cook. Speaking of Mercury Stream, Blades of Fire. Scratch that, they actually don't know how to cook, cause what the fuck is this? This is the most generic Souls-like I have ever played, and even though it had cool concepts, they were not good enough to carry a 30-hour long game. Fighting that absolute dog shit final boss after being bored from the game 10 hours from then made me realize, man, maybe the Souls fatigue is setting in. Speaking of Souls fatigue, Wu Chang Fallen Feathers. Now, Souls fatigue is another one of those buzzwords used a lot recently, but I do kinda identify with it. I feel like people who say that are either just not fans of the genre at all and just say that to hate without even trying them, and people like me who play too many of them and well, yeah. I know I might still get comments going, I'm still enjoying them, and that's totally fine, but also understand where we are coming from, right? Because well, most Souls-likes I feel like don't change much, and honestly, a lot of them are just melding into one another at this point. Now, I love the genre, and I will still keep playing a few that I'm interested in next year, but I want to see change. Wu Chang Fallen Feather, well, does not bring that. It feels like a dollar store Black Myth Wukong, and I have seen many people say that they felt Wu Chang was better, and I just can't see it. Because I played this game on launch, and judging from my first and only playthrough, it did not have as much depth in the combat as Black Myth can have on a first playthrough of that game, and the combat felt very floaty. The game pacing was also just all over the place and not relative to the main character a lot. The enemies felt a lot slower, that you could just wreck them without much difficulty, while some of the bosses were just too fast and, well, it felt like parrying them was like the only viable option, and it's a skill that's only locked to the Greatswords for some reason. Now, Honglan is the best example of this. I mean, she straight up has the parrying tutorial show up right before her fight. That shit is crazy. I know you can beat this boss with other weapons, but it feels like she was designed to be fought like this because it just is so much smoother and more enjoyable to fight her with parrying. And another reason why is because the getup and healing animations, which was literally just some Dark Souls 2 levels of speed in a Bloodborne-like environment, which was fixed in the later patches, but then they kinda just ruined a lot of other things in those patches, so yeah. Beyond that, I also saw a lot of praise for this game's level design, which was pretty good, even though it relied heavily on ladders for a lot of it, but it was still fun and better than most Souls-likes. Avian Marsh specifically was the peak of this game in terms of everything. The game finally had a distinguishable art style from Black Myth, and the boss of the area was actually peak. But then I saw people say we didn't get this quality of level design since Dark Souls 1, which I personally found the worst part of the GLAZE, because Bleak Faith Forsaken not only has world and level design on that level, it actually has the best world design I've seen in a Souls-like, including From Software, so yeah. Anyways, Wu Chang might just be the second most overrated game of the year for me, because I was expecting it to be even better than Kazan with the way people were talking about it, and well, it really wasn't. It's a 7 out of 10 game at best, especially after the patches, just tarnishing it. But the most overrated game, even though it didn't technically come out this year, but I just had to talk about the PC release of Stellar Blade. Holy shit, you had to be there to know the crazy amount of hype this game's PC release had. It was fucking crazy. Now, I don't think I have to spell out exactly why most of the hype was generated, but even still, I had seen some people say this was their favorite Souls-like or their favorite action game, which is absolute baloney. If you think Stellar Blade is the best action game ever made, then sorry, you don't know how to fucking play action games, cause holy. Now, there was another cause of debate surrounding this game, and it was about if the game was a Souls-like or light or straight up an action game, and I'm strongly in the group that thinks this is a Souls-like or at least a light. Actually, I made a whole ass YapFest Reddit post when I was in my Reddit arc earlier this year, which was a mistake, something that I still haven't gotten out of completely because, you know, this video, haha. But it detailed why I thought Stellar Blade was similar to Souls instead of character action, and I'm proud and also embarrassed about that post because of how much thought I put into it, and well, it got taken down by the moderators because it felt like it was not encouraged in discussion, even though I posted it on, you know, Reddit, and that was a rule violation, even though 90% of the posts there are just what game to play after Dark Souls 3, which is a clear violation of community reputation, but whatever. The reason why I'm going all victim complex here is because I wanted to state how it is not worth at all to waste your time on making posts on Reddit because of how easy it is for them to just get deleted, especially if it's a controversial topic, so it's better to just make a video so you can just say whatever the fuck you want and get it all off your chest, I guess. Side tangent over, god. Stellar Blade is just an alright game, and there are two things which I feel like carry the quality of this game, and they are the bosses and the music. Holy shit, the hype fest. This is the only game in which you get to fight a bloodthirsty monster which is literally too angry to die, to fucking girl rock. Bro, what the fuck? Seriously, it's so peak. Why aren't more games like this with their music? And yeah, the music overall is just fantastic, which makes sense because this game was published by gacha game devs, and gacha games have the best fucking music in gaming, and you're gonna be in pure bliss the entire time you're gooning to this. This is what I mean about games being disappointing. Not that they are bad, Stellar Blade is like a great 7 out of 10 game, but the hype around the game raised my expectations to astronomical degrees, but I guess that hype could have been more around Lover's Lab than the actual game. Mandragora. Again, it's pretty mid compared to the crazy glaze that Zionist Storm was giving to that shit, even though to be fair, the best part of the game was the start of it, so yeah. The game does look incredible, but Shinobi Art of Vengeance came out this year, so yeah. Dispatch! I just love the outcry of Dispatch fans when Genshin Impact won player choice. They were all like, we lost to the Gunas! Like seriously, a similar thing could be applied to you by calling you a chronically depressed redditor whose only spark in life came from watching Moist Critical play and glazed this movie. And yes, I mean movie. At least in the Walking Dead games, the gameplay did affect what happened to you, but this game's gameplay is the most brain-dead, connect-the-dots, boring nonsense that I have played this year. I don't think I have ever wanted to have a cutscene interrupt my gameplay more in my life. The cutscenes and the story itself is genuinely top-notch and has some really nice character writing and moments that make you really care about what's going on. And it goes to show just how well this story was, that it motivated me to play it, because I would never go through that garbage for anything less. Besides that, I even have problems with the story, namely some of the endings which just don't make sense. Spoiler alert, like Matt Mercer can see the future and he couldn't predict that Invisigal would get herself shot for Robert. Like literally anyone could see that coming, ironically, and even then, this guy just gets his ass handed to him while being armed along with his squad, who, let's just say, the power-up didn't do anything for him. Overall, as a video game, this game is a fucking failure, but as a story, it is fucking amazing, and even then I wouldn't say it deserved best narrative. Best voice actor should have gone to Jesus though.
You gonna eat those Twinks?
That's not what they're
You know what? Help yourself.
Also, kind of just a fun fact, but I like to pretend that I'm the main character in a Telltale game when I'm at a family function or some shit. It just makes it more bearable, honestly. Just wanted to share that, I guess. The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered. I feel like a lot of politics and things surrounding video games can help paint them in a worse light than what they are. It happened with South of Midnight this year, a game that I really liked, and I thought it told a very heartwarming story, and even though the combat was very mid, the game was short enough for it to not be a big problem. In general, it's a short and sweet game I would not really remember after finishing, but then you go on the internet and see titles like, "They made a white woman the main villain of this DEI slop," and I'm like, no they did not. You gotta play the game because her portrayal might be the most graceful portrayal of a villain I have ever seen. The ending made me feel things, but the outside narrative painted it in such a bad light, which just sucks. And that's why when I played The Last of Us Part 2 this year because of the PC release, I came with an open mind because I thought maybe people were putting politics in a place it didn't belong. And well, I'm not one of those people that has a hate boner for this game's story. I thought Joel's death felt a little weird. Didn't think that dude would give his name up just like that, but I can't accept the justification that he just slipped up for once. It happens, he's only human. The problem, however, with the game was the gameplay. The first part filled a unique niche which wasn't filled before, with the whole stealth combined with survival horror, which even though I did get bored after a while, was good enough to carry the game for me, especially because of the dynamic between the main characters. Last of Us 2, however, just does not make enough improvements in the combat to not make it boring for me, and the pacing was just so slow that, well, I couldn't get through even a third of the game, and I was playing on hard. The story was just not driving me, and honestly, if the game was shorter, I would have finished it, but it's pretty big, and well, I just can't, so all things considered, I can't believe this game sweeped 2020 Game Awards, and Doom Eternal won nothing! Because as a video game, Doom Eternal is just superior, but hey, most game journalists did not make it to the first level of that, so can't blame them too much. Also, I can't believe this game got a remaster 7 years after release. Monster Hunter Wilds. Would have liked this game if I could, play it. The Rogue Prince of Persia. Oh, you know this shit is not unbiased because I loved The Rogue Prince of Persia. It has by far my favorite soundtrack of the year. Sorry Claire Obscure, but this game just does not have a singular mediocre piece. Every goddamn piece of music is just heavenly to me. And the game looks beautiful and the combat and traversal are so peak. Then, why was it disappointing, you ask? Well, the difficulty. Game was just too easy and I beat it on my 4th attempt. Kinda bad for a roguelike, combine that with not enough variation and you can see why it's here. It's sad, but hey, I want to put it in here just to make a point. Okay, enough negativity. Now it's time for the GLAZE Fest to begin. I'm joking, I'm still going to criticize things that these games do bad, but also things that I thought they did so good that, well, I can't help but love them for it. And there isn't a better way to start off than talking about Lost Soul Aside. Now, even though I believe Lost Soul Aside is a 7 out of 10 game, it wasn't disappointing because it delivered on the one aspect that I wanted it to. And yeah, the combat of this game is amazing. It's one of the best systems I have experienced in the genre. I wouldn't go too in depth on it, but I will say I fucking lost it when so many complaints were coming in for this game's bosses and how tanky they were, because for me, none of these bosses were lasting over 2 minutes. And I was dumbfounded when people said it took like 7 minutes to beat Victor. For people who did give up on this game because of this, go back and just go crazy in the training room. You can pull off some crazy combos even with just 2 weapons. And well, you can just straight up animation cancel your way through to keep an enemy in the air infinitely. And that's where most of your damage will be coming in for the bosses, and that's when you realize how easy these bosses actually are. Beyond that, I just did not understand the complaints regarding this game's story, because if you do play through it, you'll realize it's just mid at worst, and it's definitely better than the story of the highest rated game on Metacritic of this year. Yeah, we're gonna get to that. Thing is, I was playing on English, expecting Yakuza 1 level voice acting, but after the starting act, it just never really got as bad. The first 40 minutes of this game are easily the worst part of it, and it's unfortunate that it was handled this badly in all regards, because this is what really killed the game. Beyond that, it's just dumb fun, and actual hack and slash game fans were pretty happy with it. I believe it isn't the most memorable game, but it has some really nice music and some really nice looking areas that manage to be nice accessories to the main course. I feel like the story should not matter as much for a video game, but it seems like that's not the case anymore. But ironically enough, I'm not actually against it. If the developers manage to make decent stories that don't halt the pacing of an action game and motivate you to play it, well, I would say that it just leads to better games. Speaking of better games, Split Fiction. I cannot believe this game is not in the top 10, cause holy fuck, this here is stacked. This is the game that would be in my top 5 in most years, but yeah. Now, it's not a perfect game, there are a lot of parts of it that were just kinda meh. I don't know if it was because of the game or the dude I was playing with telling me that shit was getting boring. Maybe it was just because he had a hate boner for Mio and her sections, but he was the only one I had to play games with at that point, so I just had to deal with it. But even still, there are others who said a few chapters like 2 and 5 did feel a bit boring, so maybe I'm not alone. Still, I feel like this game's strongest suit, that being considerable change at every chapter, might just be the worst part about it because it leads to some chapters and ideas just not being as fleshed out or working out as well. But it's still a very fun game for the most part, especially the 1v1 minigames, which are the best part of any Hazelight game. And well, there was another game released this year with some of the most fun minigames, and well, you can guess which one that is.
Your little birdie's ready to fly.
Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii! It's just so much fun playing the Yakuza games, and they're finally becoming a bit mainstream, especially in the West. So maybe they can stop hiring sex offenders in their games. Insert obligatory Kagawa rant here, and yeah, that was probably the entire purpose of this ranking. Fuck that guy. Mafia: The Old Country. This would generally be in the disappointing tier, but for some reason, I really like playing this game. I like the story, and yeah, it's pretty cliche and by the numbers, but also it was short and the combat was pretty fun surprisingly. I liked using the listening mechanic aggressively instead of defensively like the Last of Us games, and well, I just hadn't experienced a game like this in a very long time, and I can't believe I like this game that much. But on the complete opposite side of the spectrum,
No! Oh, fuck, no, actually, no. What the fuck is this bullcrap, bro? Oh, you killed me, bro.
now Absolum is my kind of game. A beat 'em up, a roguelike, has a beautiful art style and a great soundtrack. But I just didn't love it. I liked it, but I don't see it as being a masterpiece. Now the biggest reason why may just be because it came out after Hades 2, which even though I will shit on it when we get to it, Hades 2 is still probably the best roguelike that I've ever played, and following that act is pretty rough. Along with the netcode being pretty fucking rough and the sheer amount of bullshit happening on screens a lot of the times, leading to co-op being pretty fucking awful. And yeah, I feel like this game would have been better without being a roguelike, to be honest. Even though the roguelike elements make the game more fun, it only really happens around the end of the game, and when you do make some crazy builds, the game just shits itself. I had 6 sparks of power before fighting the final boss. That is fucking insane. Just look at how badly I fucked him up. The game was playing itself at that point, so yeah. Maybe I would have just liked it to be a more God Hand-esque adventure where your character got some crazy powers as you progress the story. And the story itself could have felt less disjointed as well because, yeah, that was rough to follow. But hey, it's still a pretty good game and I liked my time with it. Also, very small side tangent, but people really glazed the game by saying that Mick Gordon and Yuka Kitamura worked on it, which led me to thinking that they were the only two that worked on it, but nope, it was Gareth Coker, and you know that he cooked. He should be just as big of a name as those two for all I care, cause he carries the soundtrack. Mick Gordon's track, even though I love that guy, feels more like crazy noise compared to the separate release where you get to see how peak it is, and Yuka Kitamura, well, I'ma be honest, this will be a controversial take, but most of her tracks sound the same, and it is no different here. Like legit, it's literally just the Abyss Watchers track again. And I'm glad that Shoei Miyazawa has pretty much taken the mantle for From Software because my god, he does not have that problem. Listen to Divine Beast and Caligo and tell me if you believe it was made by the same person. They are so peak and fit so well, my god, I'm gonna goon. Speaking of goon, Lies of P. Yeah, okay, I don't even know why I said that. I need to stop. Honestly, most of what I remember from the base game was this one fight, but god damn did the DLC deliver. It looks so preem, which is the best word to describe Lies of P. It just is the premium Souls-like, and the DLC just enhances that even more. Just look at those animations, man. I love the Pale Knight. Lamakia was my favorite fight in the DLC just because it felt like a duel between two dudes with really cool weapons, and then he turned into Gascoigne. But hey, I love that boss too, so I just ate that shit up. The story and especially the ending and the main villain especially were such a step up in my opinion. It's just so dark, I love it. And Arlecchino, even though being just a discount Heath Ledger, is at least dripped the fuck out. Look at that, bro, holy shit. The boss fight itself is, well, the epitome of my biggest problem with Lies of P. The bosses are just not fun to learn for me because you're just very shoehorned into parrying in this game, because if you're fighting a boss that isn't a mistake looking at you, Killer Croc, the best thing to do is just stand there and parry shit. It repairs your weapon, it does stance damage, you don't have to worry about positioning and stamina management. Red attacks can also be parried from massive stance damage, and yeah. Now compare that to Neo 2 bosses and well, that's it, I don't even have to say anything. That game's combat and bosses are just... yeah. So this is where my Souls fatigue point kicks in again, because before fighting this boss, I was already prepped to lose 2 hours of my life, and it did take me 2 hours. And even though I won't deny feeling a bit of satisfaction and joy from doing all that, it's just not the same anymore at this point. I have fought so many Souls-like bosses that have 2 health bars and have took me around 2 hours to beat that the feeling of accomplishment is just not there anymore. The difficulty and the boss design has just become predictable to me, so I just don't see why people are glazing this boss. I even beat him without Leda, maybe because Arlecchino had different dialogue and I thought it would lead to a different ending. But, well, that didn't happen, so yeah. He's still the second best Arlecchino boss in a Souls-like because the best easily is this one, cause holy fuck that soundtrack is so banging. And I was genuinely coping. I was on that copium that you would be able to hear Nightmare when fighting Arlecchino. I was begging for it, but it didn't happen. So what we did get was alright, but yeah. I would like the sequel to take inspiration from Stellar Blade and Neo and cook with the music throughout. At least with the bosses, because music for Lies of P works, but it's pretty underwhelming, so yeah, I think I've been shitting on this game a bit too much. I still love it, but I have my problems, which I just don't see discussed that often, so I wanted to put my 2 cents into it. Okay, next one. Sanabi: A Haunted Day. Not much to say, it's a DLC to one of my favorite video games of all time, and it's free, and it's peak. Play Sanabi. You're gonna be doing yourself a favor. Returnal! Oh shit, sorry, Metal Eden. A very fun Doom clone to scratch that itch if you want it. It is very easy though, even on Brutal I would literally just did not die after the first level, so yeah, still fun. Deltarune Chapter 3 and 4. Oh my god, this is a big one. I just wanted to mention this just to prove my point for how stacked this year was. We aren't in the fucking top 10 and look at the amount of great games we got this year. And they say gaming is dead. Not much to say, just play it. Chapter 4 was one of the best gaming experiences I have ever had, so yeah, highly recommend. And now, we can finally head to the top 10. Alright, we're starting off the top 10 with the most interesting position in the entire video because this is the only tie in the list and it could not be more perfect considering their release and how good these two games complement each other. And they are AI Limit and First Berserker Kazan. I can't believe that Kazan is barely making it into the top 10 because I was immensely hyped for this game and for the most part, it delivered. But equally surprising is, as time has gone by, I actually like AI Limit just as, if not more than Kazan at this point, as it's the game that I have replayed and honestly have enjoyed more at this point. These games are like the complete opposite extremes of Souls-likes in my opinion, with Kazan being the very hardcore combat-focused game, whereas AI Limit on the other hand is the easiest Souls-like I've ever played that focuses primarily on exploration, world design, and vibes. And yeah, it succeeds in that. AI Limit may not be as impressive as Kazan, but it is the kind of game that you can just sit back and relax after having a bad day because it's just so soothing and satisfying playing this game. It may be easy, but it's not mind-numbingly so, as you still have to perform well in order to succeed. I don't think there was a singular time that I was actually frustrated playing this game, as its pace is practically perfect, if not a little skewed to the player's side, but it doesn't matter because it is still satisfying and timing and positioning still matters, unlike Wu Chang, which, like I stated, felt very choppy due to the game pace being too fast and the animation just not being smooth. So even though I don't think AI Limit has the depth of Wu Chang's combat at least, it's infinitely more fun, plus that game does not have AI Limit's incredible soundtrack and art design. I don't know what Marco Meatball was on when he said this, because AI Limit's soundtrack is perfect for the type of game it is, and quite possibly has my favorite ambient soundscape from pretty much any Souls-like ever. Vanguard knows how to cook. All these gacha game music studios are like savants in this shit, man, as Stellar Blade has proven. The art design, similarly to Bleak Faith Forsaken, is inspired by Blame, which I fuck with like heavily. It's not as good as Bleak Faith, but some areas are just a joy to explore for the first time because of the vibes. And overall, I felt like it would get overshadowed by Kazan, especially because of Fighting Cowboy's review, and the thumbnail of which initially calling it soulless. I'm not even joking, and that was when I stopped taking Fighting Cowboy seriously, because he did backpedal, but yeah, that was a misguided judgment to say the least. Anyways, the game actually had a lot more fans than I expected, and a lot of people saying that they enjoyed it more than Kazan because it felt more in line with the Souls formula, which hey, I like to see that. Even though Kazan is not a pure Souls-like, it takes too many elements from the genre to not be called that. Plus, many reviewers did say that it was, but I'm not gonna harp on it too much because it doesn't matter. Kazan's level design isn't the best. Now, mechanically, they are interesting enough. Aesthetically, however, it's pretty much Grey Souls' younger brother, Brown Souls, because what the fuck is this? The biggest reason why the levels feel lackluster is because of the dismal enemy variety. I can't believe I don't see enough people talk about this. The entire third half of this 40-hour long game introduces 2 new enemies. That is fucking crazy, and it is the biggest reason why I haven't replayed this game, but enough shitting on Kazan, because there is a pretty massive reason why this game makes it up here beyond all its fault, and it is the bosses. I mean, I don't even have to say anything, it's pretty much clear. This game probably has the second best Souls-like boss roster behind Nioh 2. Maluka is the GOAT. He's one of those bosses that I will not be forgetting in my entire life. The hype around this guy was unreal on launch. Now, even though some people might say that this game's bosses are similar to Lies of P, but I completely disagree. I'm not gonna go too in depth about it, but Kazan gives you more options offensively and defensively, making those fights more interesting. Plus, the boss's movesets are just a lot more interesting in general. So, yeah. I would also like to state that the Grand Cathedral level is genuinely fucking amazing. It's probably in my top 5 Souls-like levels of all time because it's perfect. Even though the enemy variety doesn't improve, the visuals, the progression, the story significance, and especially the music, which in general I believe Kazan's music only pops off in the bosses, and when it does, it's peak, but this level is the only time that I notice the music, and it is perfect. Plus, it ends with pretty much the perfect boss for this area, and the first time I fought this boss, holy shit. If you don't get chills from that, then you are an emotionless killing machine. Speaking of emotionless killing machine, Doom the Dark Ages. It's so unfortunate that this game is the successor to pretty much the best first-person shooter game ever made. Maybe Ultra Kill will take that title when it releases, but for now, yeah. But that doesn't mean that the Dark Ages is bad, because it may not be as fucking insane as that game was in a lot of ways. I feel like it was the perfect sequel, and when I first saw the reveal trailer for this game, I was fucking hooked. Medieval Doom? Like, come on, bro. And the gameplay is literally perfect as a representation for this. And so is the soundtrack. Now, I know a lot of people like to shit on the finishing move, saying that their metal slop has no soul. And I find that really sad, because if you watch one video from these guys, you will realize just the amount of thought put into the soundtrack. And this may be a hot take, but but I feel like Doom Eternal's soundtrack feels better to listen to outside of playing the game, whereas the Dark Ages soundtrack feels like a perfect fit, because Eternal's music can just feel a little bit distracting at times because of how insane it is. It has a bit too much going on, whereas with the Dark Ages, it just works. Beyond that, combat is not fucking parry slop. It has parrying, but it's the first fucking first-person shooter that has a heavy emphasis on parrying, so it can't be slop. It was built for the whole stand and fight moniker that they had going on, which is so badass. The game is just fun, and a lot of replayability of the game comes from the modifications. They fucking deserve that award, man, cause holy shit, that carries this game to a certain extent. Try to call this game slow after playing it on 125 speed. Plus, it manages to make the spectacle levels go by very fast on replays. So it's just a great, fun, unique Doom experience which runs extremely well. It's very weird because the specs required to run this game scream unoptimized, but if you can run it, not a single fucking hitch. There are certain games that may be running on 60 FPS, but due to the fucking stutters, it feels like 20, whereas with this game, even 30 feels silky smooth. So yeah, props to them for that, and well, I can't wait for the DLC. Now, next up, number 8 is Hades 2. Honestly, this game has my personal favorite roguelike system of all time, and it's one of the very few roguelike games where I have actually seen the true ending and have fought all the secret bosses, which is a far cry from my Hades 1 playthrough where I used easy mode to get through for the first time. I have come far, as they say. Now, even though I love the combat, the art style, the fucking everything, there is just a small little elephant in the room, which is the reason why this game is not in the top 3. And yeah, everyone knows it's the ending. Now, I'm not gonna talk in detail about the actual ending because there is enough discourse around it. What I do want to focus on is my man Prometheus. Now, Prometheus was my favorite character, and now that could be a bit of bias because he's voiced by Ben Starr, but sadly it seems like he's becoming the new Troy Baker, which might lead me to disassociating the character with the actor, but we're not at that point yet. Regardless, I loved Prometheus for many things beyond the voice acting, like his boss fight, his god tier theme song, and most importantly, his writing and his role in the story, which was completely squandered by the ending. Thing is, to me, it felt like the role of Prometheus was to bring change and prosperity to humankind by freeing them from the shackles of the gods, and the game was doing a great job of making you hate them because, case in point, the Athena plotline. Now, that still happened, by the way, as the secret ending suggests, but in a very long time from then, and both Melanoi and Prometheus had no hand in doing so. Pretty much, that entire build-up of Prometheus going on about calling her the agent of change, and being portrayed as this really nice guy who made a good point and later on was even able to influence and convince Melanoi herself, well, it just led to nowhere. Melanoi is now just happy being a tool of the gods, and Prometheus is just waging a war all by himself, and somehow the gods are still not able to stop him, and Melanoi has to do that shit as well. I mean, so much shit is just wrong with this ending. I know a lot of things about Hades 1's ending didn't make much sense as well, but it's not even half as bad as this, and well, I know they're making slight changes to make it better, but all my problems are still not fixed as far as I know. So yeah. So even if you like the ending, the payoff should have been better, like we can agree on that, right? Especially with how grindy it feels to get the ending. Overall, I still love the game, and the reason why I even disliked the ending was because I cared about the story, which goes to show just how good it was. So yeah, unfortunately this one aspect carries it down, but it's still such an incredible experience, and that soundtrack, God. Now, number 6 and 7 are Ninja Gaiden Ragebound and Shinobi Art of Vengeance respectively. And I won't go in depth at all about this ranking because I made a video discussing in length about these games, so refer to that video as it gives me more reach and more importantly, reduces this video's runtime, which is pretty damn massive, so yeah. Have fun with it, seems to be a good one, or at least that's what the comments told me. So now next up is a game that is very near and dear to my heart, and it actually kinda pains me to put it this low, and that is Elden Ring Night Train. Thing is, I was one of those people that was not really that hyped for Night Train. I was actually more hyped for Lost Soul Aside, which was initially going to come out at the same day as Night Train was, and I am fucking glad that it didn't, because it somewhat forced me to play this game solo and get my ass handed to me. And then go on pretty much every fucking site I could think of to get a few lats to do some runs. And well, I did. And we even made a server in which I was a moderator, hence why the goated name. Even though that didn't last very long. God damn, abusing mod power was funny as hell. Regardless, wanting to play this game led me to finding a lot of cool people to play games with in general. And honestly, just playing games with other people with similar tastes and goals was something that was just so incredibly unique to me. And it really was an unforgettable experience when we started. Like doing 3 hours worth of attempts against Fulgor to finally beat him was, well, peak fiction honestly, and it's just one of the best memories I have had just in general. And thank God, this game and From Software made me get out of my comfort zone and beat the hardest boss they challenged me with, finding friends. And honestly, now we play pretty much fucking anything at this point. A tower defense game, a torture simulator, and fucking Roblox. But Dueling Grounds is pretty peak though, so it's not really, yeah. It's literally Sekiro, but PvP. That shit is peak. So yeah, this is probably the most special game that has come out in the way that it has affected me. But talking about the game itself, it's a bit of a disappointment. Not to say that it's bad, but it could have been so much more. Like, imagine if we had more Dark Souls enemies and bosses. Bruh, like, every Dark Souls game has 3 returning bosses. Except Peak Souls 2, in which FromSoft just said, fuck it, no one likes that game anyways. Well, I fucking love it, and it tilted me personally as a Dark Souls 2 fan that we did not get another extra Dark Souls 2 boss in the DLC. Fuck that. Conversely speaking, however, the actual gameplay loop and characters are so good that I have well over 100 hours in this game and I still regularly play it, even though I've pretty much seen everything the game has to offer 10 times over at this point. The DLC also came out this year, and well, while I think it's great, I also don't think that people are wrong for being disappointed with it and leaving negative reviews without being fucking berated for it. Because seeing videos in which people are saying Souls fans don't know how to read because they are leaving negative reviews even though From Software delivered on what they said they would on the Steam page, but at the same time, that is not a great metric to measure people being disappointed, because people can be disappointed by a game knowing full well what they're getting into. Case in point, Lords of the Fallen. Like, from what the Steam page said, at least on launch, did not reflect on how bad things like ridiculous enemy spam or simplistic bosses or jank movement were. So it's not the worst thing ever leaving negative reviews if you are genuinely disappointed by something in this video game sphere. Because in the end, you have the right to do so, and it will also just lead to the $1 million company thinking, well, even though we have a loyal fan base, we can't keep under-delivering, so it's a good thing, right? Really, I don't want to sweat on this any longer because the next part will have a lot of that anyways. So I will just say, Elden Ring Night Train is a very good and unique experience, which, even though disappointing in some aspect, is still worth picking up. If not for anything else, but for that god-tier soundtrack. Holy shit. Speaking of god-tier soundtrack...
You've done well to make it this far, Great Ninja. Face me!
I mean, I could just leave it at that and this position would still be valid, but I have to show you this as well. I apologize for what I say here. Ninja Gaiden never disappoints, and this team took me back when things were better than they are now. I cried so much the first time after 10 fucking minutes of hearing it. Beautiful track. R.I.P. Father, I know you'd understand. Holy shit. This is the kind of emotion this game gets out of the average player, bro. And when I was playing this game for the first time, I was like, how could anyone hate this game? And well, sadly, some people do. And it unfortunately, and quite predictably, are the Ninja Gaiden fans themselves. Ninja Gaiden fans are one of the worst fan bases I've seen in any fictional media ever. They're up there with the classroom of the elite fans, but not even close to being as funny. So like always with every single new release to a pre-existing franchise, the old fans will always go on about how it does not feel like the said franchise. Well, I wanted to test that myself in Ninja Gaiden's case, and honestly, I was aching for more Ninja Gaiden after finishing 4's Master Ninja, so I decided to play through the infamous Ninja Gaiden 2, not the Sigma release, which is ironically enough considered the beta release, cause you know, no difficulty, blood, or violence. No, I decided to play the original on the Xbox, or Xenia Canary, definitely legally because I just had an Xbox lying around to play this one game. And well, I decided to do not only a normal playthrough, no, I decided to go even further beyond and do one of the hardest things a gamer can accomplish: beating Ninja Gaiden 2 on Master Ninja difficulty. This is gonna be a pretty massive side tangent, bigger than I thought, so go to this timestamp to skip it if you aren't interested. But this is probably the most interesting part of the video, so yeah, beware or some shit, I don't know. So, when I first played this game on Warrior difficulty, I found it pretty easy. But I knew for a fact shit would change on Master Ninja, so not wanting to get burnt out from playing through Mentor, cause like only 1.4% of players have actually beaten that, implying that it's fucking difficult, I knew for a fact I would just say, you know what, Mentor is good enough, and never touch Master Ninja. So fearing that, I decided to search for a Master Ninja save file, which was not a bad decision in hindsight, because it unknowingly led me to pretty much what I would say is the most active Discord server of Ninja Gaiden fans. And that led me to being guided by one of the best players of Ninja Gaiden 2, Fernam the Toxic Dude Bro. And well, yeah, he is a bit toxic, but honestly, I think he would take pride in being called that. I mean, he made pretty much one of the most entertaining hate crimes on Ninja Gaiden 4 with some of the funniest comments ever. And well, that led me to getting a pretty good chance at beating Master Ninja because everyone in that server was more than happy to help me in learning the mechanics and how to get through certain parts of the game. And in general, if you're not like talking about or glazing Ninja Gaiden 4 and are not shitting on the older games and are willing to learn about what makes them good, they will be pretty fucking nice to you and even help you in that journey of enlightenment. And that journey was pretty fucking rough. Like, learning how to fight and play the game holding the block button was an experience to say the least. And you pretty much are forced to learn and master the many fundamentals because Chapter 1 and 2 on Master Ninja are fucked. They are pretty much the hardest enemy encounters out of any fucking video game, and an abundance of my personal favorite video game enemy of all time, the ISIS Ninja. These motherfuckers pretty much make you learn how to play the game, and the way you play this game is the most unique and badass way imaginable, and that is by being offensive and defensive at the same time. Now, I know a lot of people like to downplay Master Ninja gameplay in this game by saying it is just guillotine throw and rotate Y ultimate techniques with the lunar, which are these super moves you can do by absorbing energy of dead enemies. And well, these people just kinda expose themselves as never having actually played this difficulty, because the amount of things you need to consider while doing every combat encounter is nothing short of fucking insane. Not gonna go in depth about it right now, but just to make my point, you have to, number 1, create opportunities by generating essence, meaning at least killing 2 enemies in the most efficient way possible using Ryu's kit. Number 2, chain iframes through wind path and wind run and decide on the fly if you want to do a normal jump or a wind run due to the auto targeting. Number 3, use shurikens to aid in on-landings and animation cancels. Number 4, deciding which weapon to do on-landing ETs or UTs with depending on the situation. Number 5, using bow and incendiary shurikens along with their ETs and UTs. Number 6, performing guillotine throws. Number 7, performing camera control to keep mages and archers off-screen, forcing them to use melee. Number 8, keeping track of de-limbed enemies for either using them for iframes or in the case of mages, praying to fucking God that you don't die. Number 9, using items such as Lives of the Thousand Gods and heals given from the save statues efficiently, where you can either secure a save or use it not to waste items and essence. And number 10, lastly, my personal favorite and most underrated part of this game's Master Ninja, essence management. In this game, essence is your money, and if you perform an ultimate technique, you get 7 times the amount of money an enemy would usually give you. But if you absorb that essence to do another UT, you get a fraction of that amount. Plus more depth is added when you can use blue and red essence to instantly UT, but they give you Nimpo and health respectively. So choosing when and how to use essence to increase survivability and economy gives every single encounter more depth than any action game I have ever played. Sure, the way you beat Master Ninja is not as flashy as Dante Must Die, but it's efficient, and the real style is getting the most you can out of every encounter. God, I know I yapped a bit too much and people might find this boring or confusing, but I want to make the point that there's a reason why the old heads are as gung-ho about Ninja Gaiden 4 not meeting expectations that most people will not understand. But I will also mention later how they are wrong with their verdicts on the situation on Ninja Gaiden 4. So yeah, for now let's continue on. I got through chapter 1 in about 5 hours, but doing so led me to getting to chapter 2 with no items, and that was a mistake. And well, I played through this initial gauntlet enough to be able to beat it in my fucking dreams. It was awful, like 5 fights strung together, took me about 3 hours to beat. But then came the Rod of Valor fight, which I only did due to it being a future investment, as this unlocks the Test of Valors, which actually just suck. It is an empty arena with usually 2 different enemies and just a lot of those enemies. Some are easy and are great to farm essence, but are pretty fucking boring, whereas others are just torture simulators, and I feel like NG4 did these much better with the Purgatory tiles. I still believe Doom Eternal's Slayer Gates are the best representation of challenge arenas in games due to the enemy variety and area layout and arena layout, but NG4 does it pretty well, or at least better than NG2. And now that we are at the hate train for NG2, let us continue by talking about the bosses, because that is where I got stuck at next. I can, with quite a lot of confidence, say that the bosses in the original Ninja Gaiden games fucking suck. They single-handedly falter the quality of these games, and that's coming from someone who has such good mastery over some of them that I have beaten most without using items, and some completely hitless, like Alexei. And I can still say with confidence that they sucked. And the biggest reason why is consistency, or lack thereof. These bosses are just not consistent, with either enemy spam which does not mesh well at all with the arena and the boss, like the case with Resetsu over here, or just have terrible movesets, like Elizabeth. So if you don't have Nimpo and God by your side, these bosses will drain you. They're not the hardest part about these games, but they are quite easily the worst. But thankfully, there is one fight in the game which I fucking adore, and that is Genshin. Oh, I love this fight. This man has consistency, mainly because no grabs, so it is mostly just wait for him to attack and attack yourself, rinse and repeat. And well, that's all it takes for him to be the best. And it kind of pisses me off that people, especially old heads, like to use the word Simon Says to describe NG4 boss design, while the only good boss in NG2 follows the same ideology. But whatever, fact is, bosses that are consistent and set the pace of the fight are going to be great, no matter what. Next up, chapter 3 to 11. Pretty much the same deal, honestly, for all these, because they start featuring fiend enemies, which are not even half as engaging to fight as the ninjas, and well, are the complete epitome of enemies that the Ninja Gaiden series prides on not having, which are mindless, glitchy, damage sponges which can take out 90% of your health bar with one swing. And honestly, I never see many people talk about this, but these enemies are even more prevalent than ninjas, especially in NG2. Like, remember the one red enemy that cleaned my health bar? Here you go, fight fucking 50 of them 5 minutes later. And the sad part is, it is pretty fucking easy, and this is where the whole rotate Y argument might come in, because it is just as easy as doing rotate Y landing and watching a fucking cutscene play for 2 minutes, and you are done. You can deal with every fiend encounter like this, and the fact is, it is not worth dealing with them any other way. Thankfully, the currency system kinda saves these fights where you are incentivized to make money, and honestly some enemies like Lycans are literally just money bags. Have fun ripping and tearing, I guess. Even though it's satisfying enough, it's just not as engaging, and it's a flaw that both NG2 and NG Black have, but mostly NG2 because there are more fiend fights, even though Black might have fights that are even worse. Honestly, the dip in difficulty is kinda insane. I went from taking like 12 hours to completing chapter 1 and 2 to completing 3 to 11 in about 10 hours, and honestly the dip did not stop, because even chapter 11, which was the most hyped chapter in the game as being ball-crushingly difficult, was pretty manageable. I pretty much knew how to play the game at that point, and the Tonfas are meat crushers, even though I admittedly locked in beating 4 Master Ninja chapters every day at that point, so yeah. Still, I love this chapter. It was Ninja Gaiden at its finest, so much so that if I want to show someone the brilliance of this game, I would show them this. And because of that, I have a save file right before the Staircase of Death, which I return to every now and then. Which, talking about, holy shit, that was fun. Look at how many people I'm stepping on. God, that shit was peak. It would have been my favorite part of the game if not for the ISIS ninja battle at the end of chapter 11. Which solidified my skills at the game and the fact that these ninjas have now joined my holy trinity of goated video game enemies, along with the Crimson Heads from Resident Evil Remake and Marauders from Doom Eternal. This is the kind of enemy that literally forces you to play the game a certain way, and if you can't adapt, you'll hate them. But if you do, every fight with them is exhilaration at its finest. The kind of peak that I doubt the series will ever reach, but I believe that is fine because it gives me a reason to return to this game. Now after that, fighting Genshin on an erupting Mount Fuji was just better than sex. And honestly, if the game ended on this chapter, well, it should have ended on this chapter, man, cause holy, the rest of the game is fucking torture. The rest of the chapters just look awful and oversaturated, plus it's a boss rush, which, yeah, not fun. The kind of things this game made me do is unlike what any other game has asked of me. Like for example, doing an XSY string perfectly for 30 seconds to down this bitch. This is no joke the most popular way to kill this boss. Not everyone can do this. But finally, after going through, no joke, a 6 boss long gauntlet in the final chapter, I had beaten it. Ninja Gaiden 2 on Master Ninja. And yes, Delicate Weapon from Cyberbug 2077 was playing when I beat it, which was like literally perfect. And well, this was one of the most unique experiences I have or will ever have, honestly, playing a video game. And even though this was a massive side tangent, I just had to document my experience. Now, to speak briefly about Ninja Gaiden Black, I've played through half of Master Ninja, only just having defeated Ama, mainly because I had to get this video out. And well, it's amazing too. Chapter 1 might be almost as good as Chapter 11 of NG2, especially because of how great Murai was. And well, the ninja enemies are fucking incredible. It's not a crazy thing to say that they might just be the best enemies in gaming. I personally prefer NG2 ninjas over them because they pushed me farther, but they're also a little bullshit. By that I mean, look at this, it's a bonkers level of explosions, but it's peak. Conversely speaking, I don't believe in the sentiment that Black is the objective best in the series, because I do believe the story was probably the worst due to the voice acting and direction of the cutscenes, along with shit like Doku teleporting behind the Tentai BDSM woman. Like, was he scared of Ryu or some shit? Like, NG2's story is literally just hype moments and horror farming, but I feel like it works better because it was less cringe and very funny in a it's so bad it's good way, like Alexei being statue sexual and shit. The area design as well I didn't think was as good as NG2, even though mechanically Black's level design is better, but I feel like it is fluff. And I like the more focused approach of 2, as the one thing I care about NG are the fights. And even as a Metroidvania fan, I do believe going linear was the right idea, as it helps the pacing and arena design. Black also has a lot of problems with the camera and the fiend enemies being very fucking bad, and the bosses, even though better than NG2, are still pretty terrible, except Murai. So yeah, I don't want to sound like an ass shitting on one of the most renowned action games of all time because it is still amazing. The point I'm trying to make is, all these games are flawed. And not only in terms of everything beyond combat being lackluster, but even the combat itself having issues. And what game you really like depends on personal preference. But we still respect the first 2 NG games for what they did and accomplished, instead of just shitting on everything they couldn't do well. And I feel like the same acceptance should be given to Ninja Gaiden 4 and just newer action games in general, like Lost Soul aside. I know a lot of old hack and slash game fans are bewildered by the fact that many melee-centric games nowadays are just trying to be the new Dark Souls, but not the new Devil May Cry or Ninja Gaiden. But the fact is, making hack and slash games is just more difficult than making Souls-likes. Hence why most games in this genre don't have much going for them beyond the combat, which is why your average Souls-like just destroys them in terms of story, exploration, level design, art style, etc. But another reason why is because they're received so well. I mean, Wu-Chang Fallen Feathers is half the game Ninja Gaiden 4 is, and it was still so well received, it's insane. Whereas most hack and slash game fans will complain about the most minute details, like suck to target. And that action games should not have combos, while having no joke over 50 hours in this game. I'm not joking, most people that shit on NG4 are the ones playing the game the most, and that's because this is the only new game they played because it has Ninja Gaiden attached to it. Because most of them have such a massive hate boner from modern gaming as a whole, and look down upon anyone who enjoys these new games and still judges modern games without having played a singular one of them because they would just much rather live in the past, and it's annoying. I think instead of saying this thing fucking sucks and Platinum's leftover molested ass team can't even comprehend the ideas of the greats of the past, they should say, oh, there are new ideas here which are really cool, even though it has aspects that I didn't like as much. I will either try seeing why I don't like them and understand the vision, or just drop it instead of playing it for 100 hours just to complain. This is why I'm glad that JTB is the face of Ninja Gaiden community, at least for me, because he embodies everything that an old head action game fan should be. Regardless, I have yapped way too much about it. Fact is, nothing will change for the near future. I don't think the old heads will change no matter what, but I can only hope the new fans can breathe life into this genre because I personally love it and I want more. In conclusion, as someone who has experienced Master Ninja of 3 of the 4 mainline games, I can say with confidence, all of them are like equally 8 out of 10 games with practically timeless combat that if you are able to look over the flaws of, will enjoy. My personal favorite might just be NG2 because it's the game I have revisited the most, mainly because of survival, but NG4 is a close second. And I actually had a lot written down about it, but I feel like this ranking is already a bit too massive. So just take it from someone who does understand what makes this series great, that well, it is just as amazing. And even though it does not enhance the extremely unique combat philosophy of NG2, it carves its own unique path, and it might take #1 spot if the DLC is good. Plus, to finally give my 2 cents on if this game is a Ninja Gaiden game or not, well, Ninja Gaiden is about efficiency, and this game finds a way to increase efficiency through style, so your combos are a tool to break your enemies instead of just styling on them, especially in relation to the bosses, which are easily the best in the franchise. And if someone disagrees, they are delusional. Plus, you can very well play this game like Ninja Gaiden 2 and get through it, so yeah. People will be like, this game doesn't feel like Ninja Gaiden and can't name a singular other game that feels more like Ninja Gaiden than this game does. Because they can't. God, if only this game was called Ninja Gaiden Blood Raven or some shit, so people would complain about it less. But knowing NG fans, that's a no-go. Still, to give them credit, they actually are always down to help you and will provide things like save files and whatnot, and honestly, their help and support is much better than the fucking Prime Hack subreddit, who just fucking ignore you even though you're asking for help in the help and support channel. I will never forget them for not letting me finish Metroid Prime 3. Fuck! And also, honestly, by this point, I have a bit of a soft spot for the Ninja Gaiden fans. But yeah, they still suck though. Also, I feel like I may be the only person on earth who noticed that this one song that plays in this one fight in Ninja Gaiden Black is extremely similar to the theme of Yuri the Boxer from Megalobox. And I just had to make this fun fact known. And now finally, number 3 is of course Clair Obscure Expedition 33. Get it? Because Ninja Gaiden 4 was at 4 and Expedition 33 at 3, okay, whatever. The best thing I can say about this game is that when I was scaling this really bullshit but very fun gestural platforming section with this really cute and goofy music playing, I thought, yeah, this is the Final Fantasy VII of my generation. This is the kind of emotions that the people who played that game way back then must have felt with that game. And even though Clair Obscure may not be my personal Game of the Year, it very well deserved the Game of the Year and all the other awards that it got because it genuinely is an amazing experience. And I know a lot of people call the story basic and the combat to be a quick time event fest, which while both being completely untrue, kinda just proves that everything that gets popular will get its fair share of unnecessary hate. But sadly, I feel like every criticism that this game gets is unwarranted, even though as someone who loves the game, it does have flaws, which I don't see talked about at all, honestly, and mostly has to do with the end of Act 2 and Act 3 as a whole, which, spoiler alert, were very lacking in combat and level design. The monolith was just extremely boring, being 3 hours of straight up combat with reused enemies and areas with only 2 enemies being unique, and that continues for pretty much every singular optional area in Act 3, along with the scaling just becoming way too crazy that it practically forced me to spam Stendhal to survive. Now I know you can build the other characters very well, But aspects like the extreme difficulty spike, plot significance of Miles' strength, and the sheer ease of use of Stendhal just made it take over all my strategies, along with the level design and enemies ranging from being pretty mediocre to straight up awful. Like Renoir's Drafts is straight up one of the worst levels I have played through in a video game. Like playing through it physically pained me a little. This was legit deep black reloaded levels of awful because of that art design, in which I feel like they went a bit too crazy portraying what someone's canvas looked like, which can make it straight up unpleasant to look at, which I feel is the case for the DLC as well, and I hope they chill out on that. Alongside that, I don't think UE5 did many favors to this game's fidelity. I'm not gonna go too in depth about it, but Lex Luthor over here made a whole ass hate crime on this game's graphics. So yeah, watch that I guess. Plus Simon's boss fight, I didn't like him one-shotting you with all his moves. It made learning them an actual fucking nightmare, leading me to make an one-shot build to get rid of him. But damn, that soundtrack, it was fucking amazing. And thankfully Renoir uses Univia Thema as well, and that dude is one of my favorite bosses of all time, along with being one of my favorite characters of all time, and that extends to Gustave as well. I love this man, bro, and honestly, I can say without a shadow of a doubt that Act 1 of this game might just be the best gaming experience I have had in a very long time. If ever, honestly. The concept of this game was just so unique, and I really would have liked if they did not go as open-ended as they did with Act 2 and 3, and put the best, most difficult and spooky part of the game before the monolith and final boss instead of what they went for, but I still didn't really mind it much. Overall, even though I have my gripes with the endgame of the game, the absolutely astronomical highs of this game are pretty much unmatched by any other game that came out this year, and well, even though I don't think that many people who use the word masterpiece know what they actually mean, when they do use that word to describe Clair Obscur Expedition 33, I feel fine with that. Because honestly, the concept of this game was just so unique, and I really would have liked if they did not go as open-ended as they did with Act 2 and 3, and put the best, most difficult and spooky part of the game before the monolith and final boss instead of what they went for, but I still didn't really mind it much. Overall, even though I have my gripes with the endgame of the game, the absolutely astronomical highs of this game are pretty much unmatched by any other game that came out this year, and well, even though I don't think that many people who use the word masterpiece know what they actually mean, when they do use that word to describe Clair Obscur Expedition 33, I feel fine with that. Because, well, this game truly is special, and I can't wait for what Sandfall and especially Lorien Testad will be doing next. Number 2, Hollow Knight Skong Gang! Well, I guess number 1 is a bit of a mystery now, huh? Honestly, even though it's not number 1, Silksong in my opinion is objectively the best game of the year. Like, it has the least amount of flaws that I can think of. Every single bullshit part of this game can be mitigated by pure skill and or knowledge, except Biowater, but the music for that is so good that it chills you out. So instead of beating a woman, you instead just proceed to beat your meat after dying to the ugly bastard of the Hollow Knight verse. Now, a bit of a spoiler alert, but the third act of this game is actually pretty damn good compared to Expedition 33. So much so, I would recommend going through the torment of Biowater to get to experience it, because it has pretty much the best parts of the game, like Ori and the Will-o'-the-Wisps like escape sequence, and of course, Scar Singer Carmelita, who is possibly Nightmare King Grim levels of peak. Now, to address the elephant in the room, the game is hard, like extremely so. So much so, I will go as far to say this is the hardest game I've ever played in my life. Neo 2 used to hold that spot before this, but it was only really difficult because of the bosses, whereas in Silksong, the bosses are the easy part, and they are pretty damn tough. No, the hardest parts are the platforming sections and the brutal fight sequences, which are sometimes one after the other, like for this one in the Cogwork Core, which was so difficult that I genuinely thought it was a late game area, but nope, it wasn't. Thankfully, Christopher Larkin kinda cooked with the music in this one fight and made a remix of the Mantis Lord's themes called The Choir, and it's so good that it manages to motivate me to get through it, and honestly, even though it was brutally difficult, it was still so much fun and so cool getting through this fight with this playing in the background especially. Like, the satisfaction was through the fucking roof. I felt fucking cool after finishing this, man. Not many games made me feel that way. Now, the main reason for my difficult journey through could be that I played on launch with practically zero guides, so I just didn't know you could get help in fights or use tools, like, at all. And honestly, this might be my biggest problem with this game, which isn't really a con but a personal issue, but I just can't find it in myself to properly use diminishing items that I have to farm or buy in games. I just can't. And that's what you need to expend to use tools, so I just didn't for most of my playthrough, and still had an amazing experience, so it doesn't matter too much. Still, the reason Silksong is not number 1 might just be difficulty as well. This game could have been a much better adventure game, but it just went too far in making everything too crazy. Like, Mount Faye has this god tier soundtrack and this beautiful landscape, but it's just a glorified platforming challenge. Same with the coral area, looks beautiful, and I was shocked that I got to see such an incredible looking area 50 hours in my playthrough, especially after Verdania. But it was just a glorified combat challenge, even though it was amazing. Still, man, this game should have just chilled the fuck out. But still, as a Dark Souls 2 fan, I love it. Plus, I love how whenever you see criticism surrounding this game, like enemy spam, massive runbacks, plus a different movement and combat system from Hollow Knight 1, people are like, it increases immersion, and it's a new thing, and we are gamers, we adapt! And if you mention Dark Souls 2 in that conversation, they just fucking start hating on it, so it's kind of funny, considering how similar these two are. I love both though, and I would have loved if both were more chill. And finally, number 1, without a shadow of a doubt, is Ender Magnolia. I had a hard time writing a script for this game actually. It is just a special game to me, so much so that I spent 3 months working on a boss ranking of this game, which wasn't a traditional boss ranking as I spent a lot of time making it into something more. And well, that was probably not the best idea. I mean, people expect to hear and match opinions on bosses in a boss ranking video instead of caring about the editing of said video. But honestly, that video was a love letter from me to that game. And even though it is pretty disjointed and kinda doesn't make sense to be paced as it was, I am still proud of it. And well, even though the game might not be as good as Silksong or as influential as Clear Obscure, it is the game that I have spent the most amount of time with and have a bit of a bond with. And well, it was just an incredibly calming and even melancholic experience playing through this game for the first time, especially because of that music, art design and characters really just enhancing my experience. And if this game was not on your radar, maybe give it a shot. It's well worth it in my opinion, and I can't wait for what AdGlobe and Livewire do next. Plus, if you want more of my opinions on this game, refer to that video. You don't have to, but yeah, I put a lot of time into that, so I'm gonna advertise it any chance I get. Now, before we get to the outro, I would like to give my personal Game of the Year awards, but not even half as extravagant because I am tired of making this video at this point, but I still wanted to state them, cause why not? So, the best visuals is easily going to Shinobi Art of Vengeance because just look at this, man. It's probably the best looking 2D game I have ever played. It's kinda crazy, honestly. With that being said, a close second would be Clear Obscure, definitely. The best story will also go to Clear Obscure. No other story this year, video game or otherwise, touched me as much as this, and people who will deny that are contrarian redditors and they need to touch grass or some shit. A close second would be Ninja Gaiden Ragebound actually. I thought that game's story was very sweet. The best combat is easily Ninja Gaiden 4, it's not even a competition, but Silksong is the close second here. I thought that game's enemy variety and unique approach to Hornet's kit was pretty impressive. The best platforming would also go to Silksong. I mean, it was ball-bustingly difficult, but also very well made. A close second would be Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, definitely. The best bosses goes to Kazan, it has to, but Ninja Gaiden 4's bosses on Master Ninja were really fun to, well, master. especially after playing through NG2's bosses, and I am like, they coked with that aspect, thank god. The best music is possibly a hot take, but like I said, the Rogue Prince of Persia has a soundtrack I can play in my mind at any point in my life at this point. Clear Obscure, of course, is a close second, but just not as special to me personally. Now for best multiplayer, there might be a bit of bias here, but Elden Ring Night Rain quite easily. It is the most impactful, influential, and unique multiplayer game that I have seen this year, so it easily gets my vote, without any competition. The most anticipated game, however, is of course Darksiders 4. Please release it this year, man. I am begging. It's probably my most anticipated game of all time. And them just announcing that last year was one of the happiest moments of my fucking life. Okay, what a beast of a video. Probably the longest one I have done on my channel that wasn't just an all bosses video of a random ass game. But yeah, I had fun. I was thinking of making this video for a long time, and now that I have, I've gotten a lot out of my chest, and I can finally focus on working on my other projects. And now, even though I actually made this video primarily for myself, I hope people found some value in these ramblings, or maybe could relate to some things that I said. If I were to talk about which game I played this year that was my favorite, that wasn't released this year, I would say Final Fantasy XVI absolutely stole my heart. And it's crazy because it is the kind of game that I just wouldn't like usually. I mean, it has 20 fucking hours of cutscenes, but I love the story of this game, and especially how well fleshed out the villains were, making the boss fights probably some of my favorites of all time. And sadly, I hear a lot of people say this game's story is just discount Game of Thrones, and I completely disagree with that. I would say this game's story is even better, because at least the characters don't start making poop jokes halfway through the story. Now, to touch briefly about what I think about 2026 lineup of games, I have to say, I'm excited. I mean, February is kinda stacked, and honestly, this year as a whole has a lot to look forward to. So I might just make a follow-up video. I'm especially looking forward to playing Code Vein 2 after finishing this video. That game probably got more marketing going for it than fucking Elden Ring, considering how much I saw it on my feed, without having even subbed to Bandai Namco. So it must be pretty good, right?
About the part everyone comes to a Souls-like for, the combat. Simply put, it slaps.
Maybe the follow-up video is a bit out of the question now because what the fuck, bro? This looks like ass! Bandai Namco put all of One Punch Man's budget into this game's advertising, cause what the hell, man? See, this is what I was talking about when I said Souls fans will praise practically anything at this point. So, I guess it's finally time for me to sign off now.